We're back. We're back. How do we get back into this? I just keep trying to get out of this business. Keep trying to get out of this business. You guys keep pulling me back in. Keep getting these requests, DMs. We get the DMs. We get the comments under posts. Oh, Pat, you got to go back. We need another COVID cabal, Pat. You got to get back in the arena, Pat. Yeah, I'm limping. I'm limping. I'm old warhorse here. But yeah, don't worry, guys. We got the wine still. Some old habits, you just can't get rid of them immediately. No, we got to keep the wine. We got to keep the wine. So even though this was going to be a day off for the wine, I don't drink wine over half the week, but this is going to be a day off. But we'll make the exception for the COVID cabal. So we're doing a couple of Greek ones here, and I'll just go real quick with this. It's kind of a miscellaneous white tasting. The Fileri doesn't really fit. This is a random indigenous varietal. If you know anything about Greece, there's just so many indigenous varietals in the country. And the brand Dionysus is not a really good brand. So you see it right here. It's kind of just like a basic. It's not like bad, just not a very kind of basic brand. But I got it because I wanted to try the Fileri. I wanted to see what it was like, but didn't really have a place to put it. So we're going to try that. Now I have the Santorini, the Assyrtiko, and this is what I'm most excited about. Assyrtiko is now quite popular on the mainland, and it's probably the biggest exported white grape along with Moschfalero. But Santorini is where it originally came from, and it's really cool. Santorini actually may not... There's some like risks of the vineyards on Santorini disappearing because it's obviously such a big vacation spot. But it's really, really nice here, and Butari is a really good brand, so I'm excited about that. And then finally, we have the Kortaki Retsina. And the Retsina, this is an Attiki, so it's a little bit of a better denomination, which I like. This is, I think, the more famous traditional appellation for Retsina. So the point of this is basically that it should be a little bit better. Those who don't know Retsina is, it's basically a white wine that has the taste of pine needles in it. Okay, pine needles in it. And the reason for that is that it uses pine sap to seal. Traditionally, it was used to seal the amphorae where they would store wine. Today, they actually ferment it with the pine needles. So it's very interesting. It's in the last here. I got a bug in my Assyrtiko. See, the bug likes it. The bug chose the middle one. But I got the Assyrtiko last because, sorry, the Retsina last because it's going to have a powerful flavor. So we'll just go through the wine real quick. We got some time. We got some patience. So the Fileri, super aromatic, super linear, almost sweet tasting. It's not. It doesn't have sugar, but it almost tastes sweet because the fruit is so round and so bright. It's nice and simple. It's nice and simple. Your mom would like it. Your mom would like it. Yeah, man. Tomashi. The pine notes are interesting. I mean, I'm okay with Retsina, but just because it's interesting. But it's one of those things like you take a sip, you're like, oh wow, that's interesting, and then you don't want it anymore. It's like a chocolate IPA. One of these like microbrewers have like double, chocolate hop devil or whatever. They have some sort of stupid thing. They put all sorts of weird shit in it. Maple syrup, pumpkin ale. Like this kind of is interesting and doesn't make me feel good. So anyway, it's kind of like that, but it's traditional, so I have to represent it. All right, the Santorini Assyrtiko. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, that's lovely. That reminds me of an Etna Bianco. That is fantastic. I'm going to show you guys this so you know. I'm going to pick up some more of those, I think. It's got that complexity that you get on a really well-made white on the front end. However, it's still very dry and almost bracing on the back end, which, I don't know that everybody would like it, but I like that it's distinct. It's distinct. And the wine is very well made. I mean, it's fantastic. It's got really incredible balance between the acidity and the alcohol. And then we'll go to the Retsina. All right. Ooh, you can smell it. You can smell the pine needles. But hey, you know, pine needle tea, maybe pine needle wine. Maybe you guys have heard of the pine needle tea. Might be an antidote for some things. Some things that you might put in your body might be an antidote for that. This is actually a much better Retsina than the other one I had. And it's not too lingering on the back end. So, I mean, it's still there. It's obviously pine needles, but all right, guys. You know, just the Kortaki. If you're gonna try Retsina, I would actually recommend this one. You want to get the real thing. So, how are we doing? How are you guys holding up? How are you guys managing? You guys doing all right? Drop it in the comments. Just want to make sure my people are bearing well at the moment. Very, very important that you guys are bearing well. How is it? How are things? Yeah, it's getting pretty intense, isn't it? It's getting pretty intense. Well, look, I'm gonna say some things for the beginning before we get into some of the details, because things are accelerating very fast. It's not surprising. I think that it's happening a little faster than was expected, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing. Okay, it's a good thing. So, you know, we got situation in the Persian Gulf right now. We've got these passports and mandates, right? We got some crazy things surrounding the six. We got some crazy stuff with the audits, right? We had that Dominion whistleblower. And everything is happening very, very quickly. It's accelerating. You guys can all feel how much it's accelerating. But those of you who are watching this, and I know a lot of you guys who are watching this, a lot of you guys are feeling strong and in your power, but a lot of you guys are getting rattled. And I understand why you're getting rattled, because it's one thing to understand the playbook. It's one thing to understand something's coming. And it's another thing to go through it. And I'm just going to be very honest with you guys. If you think that what's happening right now is scary, you should really buckle up, because it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. I see it being extremely rough through March. I see it being extremely rough through March. Now, it doesn't matter, because I could be wrong with that. The timelines aren't set in stone. And what you're seeing is the end of a game. And so as the game comes to an end, two things happen. First thing that happens is that the war, that a lot of it was going behind the scenes, begins to come out into the open. So a lot of second waivers coming out now, a lot of people, second wave of awakening. This is a good thing, because the second wave of awakening basically means that it more or less becomes a mainstream narrative that there's this group of people doing these things, right? The second wave is pretty much all the people except for the diehards. There might be a third wave that comes before we kind of hit the end game. I could see that happening after the economic crash that's going to happen. But the point here is that this conflict is becoming increasingly apparent to the normies, right? It's becoming increasingly apparent to the normies. It's not going to be something that's under wraps. It's not going to be like us, you know, checking out air traffic, Monkey Works, air traffic control stuff. It's not going to be us like reading into things partially correctly and partially incorrectly. It's going to be out in the open. The regular people are going to feel it out in the open. Okay, we have this with the border right now. It's a completely porous border. There are people coming into the country from, not simply from Mexico, actually not really coming from Mexico, not simply coming from Central America. They're coming from West Africa. They're coming from all over the world. Now, how does that happen? How does that happen? Well, they're getting flown over. They're getting flown over. And there's some good indications, and John here to help has mentioned some of this. He puts together a lot of pieces. We're trying to figure these things out. That, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how weird I should be getting on these days, because we are trying to create a broad tent, and but it seems as if, from what he's saying, and this is what he's saying, Catholic Church was kind of going against Biden and everything, and saying they weren't good Catholics, and so to kind of reduce the PR, that they're now basically taking the lead and being able to move these people into the country. And what happens is that maybe they have COVID. I mean, we know they're not being tested. Okay, we know they're not being tested for COVID, even though we're having all these mandates and everything. All right. And we also know that these kids are, the Border Patrol is prioritizing them. So what happens to the rest of the border while the Border Patrol is focusing on these kids? Well, you have military-age men who are coming into the country. All right, it's like an infiltration force, and they're coming from all over. And there have now been, I've seen multiple videos of this, and I've heard individual testimony of it, but we have kids coming off of planes. We have kids getting thrown into vans. We have child trafficking is out of control at the moment. It's out of control. And the porous border is being used against this country. And it's being used for multiple levels to distract us with the focus on the children, while other groups are coming in as well. And maybe it's also being used to introduce some more strains and whatnot. That's all remains to be seen. But the point is, we're under attack from multiple different angles. And if you watch my last show on this, we did about a month ago, this is a wartime situation. If you don't believe that this is a wartime situation, and if you don't believe that parts of the military have fully signed off on what's happening, if you think we're alone, you're wrong. You're wrong. And there's a lot of indications of that. For instance, when has an ex-president had an entire air zone shut down when he's entered it? When has an ex-president had such an enormous security detail? Okay, well, this has been reported multiple times. When Trump enters into an area, they shut down the airspace. They don't do that for ex-presidents. Now, I'm not saying that Trump is the president. Okay, I'm not saying Trump is the president, but president is an administrative role. And the upper ranks of the military, the people who are in ballistic missile defense, the people who are in Space Force, the people beyond that, did not sign off on the transfer of power, which is why we saw all these discrepancies that occurred after and during the inauguration. That timing was off, and some military, wasn't saluting. Okay. I know some people still think this is batshit, but hey, do you think that what's going on right now in the world is normal? It's time to open up your mind a bit. Commander-in-Chief is the position, it's a different hat, and it's the position that controls the military. Now, the military on the lower levels, it's not that this is an entire monolithic thing. Okay, there are generals who are deep state and cabal. Everything's been infiltrated. But the most powerful weaponry, the places like Cheyenne Mountain, these spots are locked down. They've been locked down since March 2020. Okay? So, a lot of you guys in the chat are asking this. Is Trump coming back? Trump is coming back. He's coming back. He is coming back. And I'm not saying that as a wishful thinking thing. Okay? The people are waking up to what happened in the last election. They're waking up to what happened in the last election. Okay, I'm in Jersey, and by the way, Jersey isn't a pause piece of shit that a lot of you guys think it is, especially in the South. Trump, I saw it on the beach, and now people have been talking about it. But plane with a banner, right? Plane flying a banner. Trump won. Biden's a fraud. Audits prove it. Okay. I can tell you, I have conversations with very good people, you know, regular people who aren't ideologically inclined, but aren't maybe quite as aware of what's going on, because you have to change your assumptions of the world. I mean, if you're a regular person who thinks like, well, there's some corruption in government and there's some things that might happen, you know, some people do bad things, but you know, they're not seriously out there to harm us, right? There's just a couple of greedy people. If you're that's your assumption, it's very difficult to understand anything that's going on right now. It's difficult to understand it. I don't blame them, and they are going to change their assumption as this continues to intensify, because eventually you can't start excusing these actions as simple incompetence. You can't say this is well-meaning but wrong. You can't make sense of it unless you're like, they actually want to harm us in some way, right? And that's the thing, is that people have forgotten all this moral relativism, which is deliberate. People have forgotten that good and evil exists. Now, we shouldn't just say because someone does something bad that they're full evil, but evil exists. It exists in a proportion of the population. 3%, I think, are at their core evil. They're completely evil people, and you can't rehabilitate them in this lifetime. And a lot of those people have been working together. They backstab each other, but they've been working together. And they've over a very long period of time got themselves into positions where they're attempting to execute these plans. Now, go back to it. Trump is coming back, but do not be naive. Do not be naive. Do not, please rid of yourself. And look, those of you guys who have been around a while know and I'm going to address that power back thing, giving the power back in a second. But look, a lot of us fell into it. I take responsibility for this. A lot of people thought, well, maybe, you know, maybe we really are in control. Maybe the white hats really are in control. And maybe things are going to go, you know, we're going to get it exactly as we want it. And maybe it is just a little, you know, not a full theater, but maybe we really have a lot more power and they're going down. Well, they are going down, but we're not in control. On this dimension, on this plane, we're not in control. But here's the thing. They're not in control either. So understand the subcommunication here. Understand their subcommunication. They're moving fast and aggressively because they don't have time. If you had time, you would really make sure that your next set of lockdowns and restrictions were based on something that people could tangibly agree with. Okay? Right now, we have the lowest number of deaths of COVID since the whole thing started. So it's not assigned to COVID, right? It's not something that is very easily argued to the normal person. But the white hats are not in control. So when people say like Trump's going to come back in, you know, August or September, they're wrong about that. But they're not wrong in the sense that perhaps that's the intention. They're wrong in the sense that the reality dictates that both sides are going to go back and forth. And the deep state knows that they're going to lose on a certain level. I mean, it doesn't mean they're not fighting like hell to not lose, but they know that they could very well lose here, but they're going to trash the place on the way out. They're going to trash this place, which is why they have this open border with all these cells, insurgent cells, armed cells coming in. You should see the stuff that's going on in Dallas and in Texas. And I mean, very wealthy areas. There's like kidnappings. Things are getting very violent in the cities. And part of that has to do with the poor governance. But it also has to do with the fact, and poor policing, you know, light touch with policing, but it also has to do with the fact that there are legitimately cells. There are cells in the country now, and especially in these border states, although they're getting moved elsewhere, that are prepping for when things do get, and I do believe this, that the military at some point will intervene. The population, though, has to get to a percentage of awareness that it's not going to spiral into a civil war. So a lot of you guys asked, and it's a very good question, and a lot of people didn't get it. And frankly, if anybody should feel abandoned and bitter towards Trump, it would be me. It would be me. I don't have to go more into that, but if anybody should feel any sort of resentment, it would be me. And I don't, because I understand it. I understand the situation. And I have never for a moment, I've considered it, and I've never for a moment come down to the conclusion that we were fundamentally abandoned. It was a tactical thing. And I have to concede his wisdom. So basically, the situation happened was that they were trying to bait Trump into creating a civil war. And they were doing this by spreading for years the fact that Trump shouldn't have been in power, shouldn't have even gotten to the presidency. It was a theft. Okay, that was dismissed, but then that he was a fascist and that he was never going to leave office. And they said that over and over and over again, that Trump was never going to leave office and his supporters were supremacists, white supremacist or whatever. They had been doing this predictive programming thing for a while. And then they used the election. They went to go to try to steal the election, but it's not really even clear that they intended to keep it. They just wanted to muddy it so badly that with all their predictive programming, that they could, given the right moment, provoke Trump into doing something like declare the Insurrection Act, which a lot of us actually wanted him to do because we didn't understand. We didn't understand. But in his wisdom, he did not do that. And he stepped down. He gave up the Hill, which is the White House. He gave up the Hill. And then they took it, and they were surprised they took it on a certain level. If you guys watched the inauguration, you might have seen that there was like an uneasy happiness that they had. It was an uneasy happiness because they weren't really expecting to be there. They weren't expecting to get it. They were expecting him to respond, and they set up this whole thing and a lot of evidence is coming out about that. And I won't say more really, although it's interesting that the fourth police officer who was at the scene of the breach has now been suicided. Very interesting. But I guess we'll see what happens with all of that. There's a lot of citizen journalists who continue to release things like the flashbangs that were thrown into the crowd. I don't know if you guys have seen the video of that, but he, rather than try to take it directly, and when I say take it, I mean what he had won, right? Rather than defend his rightful position, he took a step back and he spared us civil war. So I want you guys to remember this as we go through the coming months and as we have an economic crash and maybe threats of nuclear war and stuff, because the deep state's going to try to do something to wrest the control of the nuclear arsenal away from the part of the military that has not given access to it to the deep state. They're going to try to create some sort of Cuban Missile Crisis situation. This seems to make a lot of sense. It's one of the cards that they'll probably play. They're going to play every card. It's the end of the game. You're going to play every card you got. Remember when things get really bad, how much worse it would have been if we had gone to a civil war. Remember how much worse it would have been if we had gone to a civil war. Because now there's a lot of people in your lives, I bet, who are now starting to come around. I'm not saying that they agree with you 100%, but they don't like what's going on either. It doesn't make a lot of sense to them. They're not on board with it. And those people would have been your enemy. Families and friends wouldn't have just had arguments, wouldn't have just not seen each other. They would have been fighting against each other. And there would have been increasing levels of paramilitary action and assassinations. And the situation would have devolved very rapidly. So please everybody here who thinks Trump's a piece of shit and Trump abandoned us. Trump is a mature person, and he actually did what was better for the country over what was better for himself. You know, when people call him a narcissist, well, a narcissist would never give up power that he earned, let alone in general. But he not only gave up power, he gave it up for us. Okay. And he's not done here, and we're not done here. You're asking near something, will China invade Taiwan? Well, it's a possibility. You know, I can't predict these things directly. They're going to use the three big flashpoints, right? Are Iran, something in the Persian Gulf. You know, we have this tanker it's not an oil tanker, it's like an asphalt tanker that was hijacked today. I mean, is that a false flag? Are they trying to create a military situation? It was hijacked from the Brits. What is their intention with that? I don't know. Are they going to try to do something with Ukraine? I mean, maybe. I agree that I think Taiwan is the most likely option because the Chinese Communist Party is very, very much involved with this Manchurian candidate situation. So I think it's very plausible that that will be a location. And also, you'd need a power that's quite big, like China, that has a nuclear arsenal to really push these things. I'm going to get to the mandates in a moment, but I just want you guys to remember, as things get rough, what we're going through is very survivable, and what would have happened was not. We are going to get through it. And look, I'm happy to jump on these occasionally. I mean, to be honest, it's not really in my best interest to be doing these things. And I'm also going to be honest with you guys that you don't really need me. You don't really need me. Okay, we spent a very long time talking about these things, and we did it because to get people awake, and to change the perception. Now we know what the perception is. And all we have to do now is say no. We have to be calm and say no. Calm and say no. So you ask about the mandates. Well, it's not legal. And there are recourses. If you are somebody who is very inclined to have to keep your position, then you have the opportunity to. There are medical exemptions and religious exemptions that some places are accepting when they're very firmly worded, and you can fight this within your institution. But I do want to emphasize something for you guys, okay? Which is that you are going to be forced. You're going to be forced to choose between the old world and the new world. So a lot of you guys are here and you're asking about, well, how do I keep my job? And I'm sorry about this noise if it's coming in for you guys. It's like the suburbs, all this lawn work. Although I can't say that it's louder than New York City, so I guess that's fair enough. You're going to have to choose between old world and new world. And I would really encourage all of you guys to make the jump, because you're not going to be able to stay in the old world. It's collapsing. If you stay in the old world, if you get an exemption right now, that exemption is not going to last. They are going to continue to push this further and further and further. You're going to have to get your boosters. You're going to have to do whatever. You're going to have to, you have to wear the double mask. You're going to have to, like, I don't know, put like a hat on. I don't know. They're gonna do all sorts of crazy things that are gonna humiliate you. They're gonna be absurd, and that are going to continue to reduce you to a subhuman level. Okay, they're gonna continue to reduce you to a subhuman level, and whether or not you want to accept that is your choice. But the new world is going to be just a couple of places at first. It's just going to be a couple of places at first, but is going to gradually become more and more. And the restaurants that say we're not going to go with the mandates, guess what? They're going to have a really hard time enforcing this stuff. Okay? Going to have a really hard time enforcing this stuff. And what's going to happen to the people is that there are going to be businesses, some maybe they'll target a little bit more than others, but fundamentally, there are going to be businesses that are not going to be in compliance, and nobody's going to really do anything about it. And they're going to have so much public support, and you're going to see this in the vast majority of the country. A lot of parts of the country are going to see some mix. You're going to see old and new world living side by side. Some parts are going to be all old world, and that's a spot like New York City, which is why I left it. It's going to be very difficult to find old world spots in New York City that are not like speakeasies and are really like, you got to have word of mouth. It's because the law is going to be very heavy in a place like that. They can contain it. But in large parts of this country, they're never going to be able to enforce anything. Don't forget for a second that there's just not a lot of them. And violence is not the answer to any of this stuff, and I don't encourage anyone to do it. But eventually, what I predict is going to happen is that you're just going to see mass non-compliance. And you're going to see mass non-compliance because that's how this stuff is solved. It happened in the communist bloc with Solidarity, right? Solidarity movement. People just decided they're not going to work. They're not going to work for the communist government. And it fell apart. Now, I don't know what people are going to do, if they're going to do that with taxes, if they're going to do that with their work. A lot remains to be seen how it's going to happen. And yeah, it's going to be tougher once the FDA and guys, don't, like, I get it. It's okay to like say it. Like, how can the FDA do this? They're all captured operations. You know that they're going to do it. Just expect it. Expect it and plan accordingly. I can tell you, the next 6 weeks for me are all business, because I don't know what's going to happen I don't know exactly what's going to happen in the fall, but I know it's going to be really hairy, and I think it's going to be hairy personally. I don't know what that means. I can speculate. I'm not going to on here, but it's going to get really, really hairy. So what? I'm as prepared as I can be. I will be as prepared as I can be. I'm getting my ducks in a row. I'm frankly enjoying the last of summer, because mid-September is when things are going to really start to, mid-September, October. I would really make sure that you have your ducks in a row by Labor Day or soon thereafter, right? Because I would really recommend, like, stop thinking that any old world institution is going to say for an indefinite amount of time. Some will delay longer, but everybody's picking a side. Now, the good news is that you can change sides, and there's not a lot of people who are in New World who are going Old World, but there's a lot of people in Old World who are moving to New World. More and more and more. People are tired of it. They're tired of this stuff. Look, the only thing I'm going to say, so with the mandates and stuff, just say no. You don't have to be loud and obnoxious about it, but I would recommend you just very public and you say no, and you can list the reasons why it's an issue. And let's be honest, there's more and more cases and more evidence of it being an issue. We pretty much know they don't even work anymore, and that they have a lot of side effects. So, and that's even becoming a normie paradigm. So you can do your research and you can cite these things, but that's really where we're at. That's where it's going. What else can I say about this stuff? You just have to say no. Don't allow yourself to be bought out, or allow yourself to be bought out. It's your choice, but don't complain once you did it. What I don't want to, what I hate hearing is people who are like, well, I didn't want to, but I had to get this thing. It's your fucking health. It's your health. What is it really worth it to you? What is it worth it to you? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is worth it to you, but it's not worth it to me. It's not worth it to me. But look, I'm not judging you if you did that. Just, a lot of those people are going to be in the second wave. It's just, you are going to have to learn to let go of a lot of things. You are going to have to learn to let go of a lot of things. It's Clippy, it's Clippy bitch. I think everybody knows people who have had adverse effects, and I think we are going to see a lot more of these in the fall. It has been a very, I was talking to a doctor the other day, and I was, talking to some other people, and they had similar conversations with doctors, and basically the practices are being, there's a lot of people who are sick. Now, we're not talking about serious stuff, but there's a lot of people who are sick this summer. And, it's Clippy bitch. I'm happy you said this stuff. And this is all I'm going to say. Because, this Trump loses trust and faith in people when he continually backs a safe and effective vax. I'm not going to defend this. And I think that, at this juncture, I will agree that I find it a little perplexing. However, I do think that there is more to this than meets the eye, and we may not really know the full details about it. There's a lot of indications that it was rushed for two reasons. The first of which was that by rushing it, it put it under emergency use authorization, which made it very difficult to mandate. I want you guys to remember that Moderna got its patent for the vax back in 2019, March of 2019. And Dr. David Martin outlines this in detail. He knows all the patents that go back to 98 about, this kind of technology. So they had this all geared up for, and they were ready. And by the way, the patent was they couldn't get the patent unless they said the deliberate release of a pathogen of COVID-19, basically. So the patent was literally for the deliberate of a V for the deliberate release of a pathogen, March 2019. And so they got approval for that. And of course, a year later, we know what happened. But by rushing it, he took away their ability to mandate it. So we would have been in a lot worse situation. Sometimes, as a foot soldier in the big thing, and also before I go into that, and it's also to do with the economy, because it would have been shut down much, much longer. And by having to go forward, and remember, he was always talking about therapeutics. He himself took therapeutics. It was to open up the economy again, because let's be honest, a year ago today, how many of us were like saying that this was going to be a bad thing that was going to harm people? Like 20% of the population, 20% of the population. I mean, it was suicide. And actually, he would have probably legitimately lost the election if he had gone out and said it. Now, I don't know how this explains what he's saying currently, but I just think it's important to say that. And what I want to say about him is that there's two things. First off, you don't always have the full information. A lot of us back in January didn't understand. We didn't have the full information. So you don't have the full picture. You have to trust the person, that the person has your back and that the person isn't giving up on you. You have to trust the person who's been criticizing just the generic version of these things for a decade is not suddenly turncoat when he's fighting on every other front for us. Okay. So I think that in the end, we may understand it better. I know it's difficult now, but the second thing is that even if what I just said isn't true, and let's just say he, for whatever reason, feels like it's important, to talk about, or doesn't get it like we get it, we don't look at him as somebody who is supposed to save us. He's a leader, and he's doing his part and he's doing far more than most people, but it doesn't mean that he's right about everything. It doesn't mean you have to agree with him about everything. You have to look at your own autonomy. And that's really, I mean, you guys are happy to start posting questions if you want to. Right now, I'll answer your questions as best I can. But what I want to emphasize here is that you guys, right now, you guys are the line. It's all about you not consenting. In many ways, that's all it takes. If everybody didn't consent, and I know that this is going to get crazy, it's going to get really crazy. You're going to see a lot of 3D things you care about collapse. You might see people you know get sick, or maybe worse. You might see your investments drop dramatically. Well, you might feel like society is going to collapse. You might see police pressure and sort of fascist, communist sort of authoritarianism. Say no. Say no and do not be afraid, because it is fear. It's fear. You do not, I will be here for you, but you do not need me. You guys are the light. You are the lights. You guys are the lighthouses for the rest of the world. You're the ones who hold the flame. And if you guys, it's okay to feel things. But we only lose this if you guys give up. That's what happens. If you guys give up, if you guys are unable to say, you know what, I don't care. Do your worst. I don't consent. I'm not going along with it. They are done. And that is what will happen. So be a part of it. Be a part of it. Would Dem governors impose restrictions in swing states even if it was political suicide? The way to look at this is, don't look at this in the old version. They are already under political suicide, because it's going to be shown that like half of these people didn't even win their elections. And that's been going on since 20 years. I mean, you could argue even longer in some cases, but I think electronically speaking, we've been having elections stolen since 2004. Guess what? You want to know something very interesting? Do you want to know something really, really interesting? Look at the political map. And it wasn't until 2004 that you saw a calcified political map. Isn't that very interesting? Ever since 2004, you've gradually seen there's blue states and the red states, because they want to divide the country against itself. That was never the case in prior elections. Look at electoral college maps. And what you will see in electoral college maps is that, yeah, maybe states have a slant, but broadly speaking, the American public votes in tandem for the same candidate. And that you'll see a lot of states go back and forth. Okay? It was not until 2004 that we had this red state, blue state, and they picked a couple of purple states, right? And they did this to produce division, like they produced division in everything. You are going to find out that Trump won pretty much this entire fucking country. It's not because places like New Jersey are not blue. Okay? They're normal people. They have a slightly different slant, but we're all normal Americans. We're all normal Americans. And the difference between the brainwashed and the not brainwashed, there's only so many of the brainwashed, and they're mostly in the big cities. They're not as much in the suburbs as you'd think. And even in the cities, it's overstated because they run up the total. There's a lot less votes in the cities than we've been told. Guys, he won. I mean, I've seen he's won either every state or he won every state but New York. He lost D.C. I mean, but it's pretty much everything besides for D.C., one way or another. We're going to find it out. It's going to come out. The point is that get rid of the division. It's not black versus white. It's not V'd versus unV'd. It's not gay versus straight. It's not Republican versus Democrat. It's not red versus blue. Okay? It's not any of these things. What it is humanity against corruption. What it is it's good versus evil. What it is it's light versus dark. What it is sovereignty versus slavery. That's what it is. That is all that it is. And when Trump comes back, that wave is going to cleanse this entire country, because at that point we're going to have 80% of the public is going to be awake to what's going on, or at least aware enough that they are not going to feel any negativity about what's going to happen. And this country is going to get cleaned up. And after we clean up this country in 2022, we are going to clean up the world. And this fight is over by 2024. Over by 2024. And yes, of course, Fauci's cabal. Of course he is. All right, guys. I feel like that's a good thing to end on, but if you have any more questions, I'll wait. I'll wait a moment. Yeah. He was a sacrifice. I don't really know what his significance was, but he was obviously a sacrifice. You know, helicopter crashing in Corona on the day that it crashed. What really happened in Nashville? Nobody really knows. I mean, I think it actually might be one of the only things that Simon Parks is really clued in on, which is Space Force direct energy weapon rather. I don't think Simon is a bad guy. I just don't really. I think he's being fed disinfo, and he's not directly involved enough in anything. He's being used, and what I think is happening is that he's a very genuine person. He's being used, and they're giving him information to spread out to confuse the other side, and to kind of compensate for that, they're giving him money for his organization. I think that's what's happening. Well, to be honest, the reason it ends in 2024, if you want to know there's a lot of prophecies that say that. It does feel right. But there is an astrological signature that pretty much all the astrologers who are awake like this agree with is very important. And, I'll direct you guys to Paul Publisher or Pam Gregory if you want to understand some of this more. But Pluto is a planet of investigation, and it has a very long movement, has a very long revolution around the sun. And Pluto is in Capricorn. And Capricorn is the signature of old institutions and hierarchy. And, it moved into Capricorn during the financial crisis. It moves out of Capricorn in 2023 into Aquarius, which is the signature of, openness and everything, the decentralized world. But it moves back into Capricorn briefly and doesn't fully leave Capricorn until 2024. So that's why you hear a lot of people say 2023, 2024. I think that by 2023, it will be apparent to everybody that they're done. But, kind of like in 1945, you know what I mean? Like the war was won. Everybody knew the war was over by the time we got to the German border, right? By the time we had pushed the Japanese back to their home islands, but there were still operations that had to occur. And I think that that's going to be 2024. There's no way that they can win, but they're still going to keep fighting. I don't think we're going to feel the tide turn on the third dimensional level until next year. And I don't think we're going to feel like the war is being wrapped up until 2023, because it's going to go to the rest of the world at that point. And I have no idea, guys, what happens after spring 2023. I have no idea what happens after Trump cleans house here. That's just the timeline is too wobbly at that point, how it's going to play out. There are two competing timelines. There's actually a lot of different competing timelines. A massive timeline shift happened on January 6th. A massive timeline shift happened. And pay attention to these things, because you'll see certain actions and you can feel it change the timeline. And I've been thinking about this, in sort of meditative situations, and remembering that I felt differently about things at different points, and that was a change of a timeline. When I say feel differently, I mean that something else felt completely certain. It's a timeline change. So, tips on getting our ducks in a row for this fall. I don't want to give any financial advice, because frankly, I'm still figuring out some of this stuff, and it's really too difficult to say. Anybody who thinks they knows doesn't know. I think diversification is key. Just diversify what you have. It might all drop, to be honest. It might all drop. Hard to say. But you're likely, if you diversify, to at least have one asset, whether it's precious metals, whether it's land, whether it's crypto, whether it's certain, blue chip stocks that isn't going to really crash. Also, maybe have some cash on hand. I would also get some supplies and food. But nothing crazy. I don't think you need anything, to be honest. But I think from a comfort perspective, you don't want to feel stress, I would get anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks of food. I don't think it's going to be that bad, especially in the States, but there are going to be supply chain issues. And as energy costs go up, that's also going to affect food prices, and along with inflation, it's already happening. You can't hide this out. People need to, I'm not doing anything to you. I appreciate the question, because it's an important thing to address, but people are not, you can't hide this out. You can't hide it out. Like, get this through your fucking head, people. You can't hide this out. Okay? Unless you want to live in the Terminator world, where you have like a couple of people who are trying to like scrape by a living in the fucking worst land in the world. Who are like kind of out of the system. That's not going to last, and you're going to be living a subsistence lifestyle. No, you fight now. Yeah, you fight now, and you fight by just simply saying no. That's all you have to do. You don't have to be violent. Don't be violent. It actually feeds into what they want. Don't be violent. Just say no. Just say you're not going to comply. Don't participate in what they're trying to tell you that you have to do. No, you don't have to do it. Don't comply. I think that if you have some land in the countryside, it might be nice to be out there. I'm not also telling you to be stubborn and be like, stay in the middle of Manhattan. And, that could be a hairy situation. There's a balance here, but fundamentally, yeah, there is no reason. You can't hide from what's coming. I don't know where Bill Gates is. It's a very good question. It's a very good question. Will future generations after 2024 ever get access to the real esoteric American history? I think they will. I think they will get it. I think they'll get a lot of it, at least. Can you explain what happens with the Maricopa County audit results? Well, I'm not so sure that there's a legal mechanism for things to change, but this is all about public opinion. If it becomes apparent to the public, and remember, there was a whistleblower from Dominion that basically proved the CEO of Dominion lied. Basically proved the CEO of Dominion lied about these systems being able to be accessed, to the internet. And you can watch the video, and if you don't understand it fully, you can ask a tech person, but basically you can toggle on whether or not it could have access. So he basically perjured himself. And remember, they're also not adhering to his subpoena. Now, there's still a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's still going to be a lot of stalling. They're going to continue to stall. But ultimately, even just the process of this audit and their response, people are waking up to it. I think that the big thing that's going to happen with Arizona is that it's going to be impossible to ignore when the final report comes out. And they're going to show the fraud on multiple levels, including electronic. And it's going to force a lot of these other states to move forward with their audits. And, you know, we've talked about PA and Georgia, that they're kind of getting things going, but it's going to become a very big push. You know, a lot of these legislatures, a lot of these people, they just don't even know what their power or authority is. You know, they've just been kind of checking boxes. They've been doing very low level stuff. We've really become, in spite of our Constitution dictating otherwise, we had de facto become such a federalized nation. But legally, we have not become a federalized nation. Legally, we are still a constitutional republic, and it's delegated to the states, and particularly the state legislatures. So you're going to see a lot of states pushing forward with it. There's also just in Landon County, Nevada, which is a very, very small county, but population-wise, but a very, very wealthy county. It's the second wealthiest county in the United States, from what this is what Juan O'Savin said. They are suing Clark County, Nevada, which is Las Vegas, to try to basically audit it, and they have $200 million in the bank to do this because it's a massive mineral wealth county. And per Nevada law, they can basically, if they sue another county and they're not satisfied, they don't have to certify who's going to become the governor. They can basically block the entire state governments. So you're going to see a lot of this stuff, more and more of it happen state by state by state. And as more and more states, after Arizona falls, other states are going to fall. Well, Ben, you're lucky up in Canada because I do see it here in the States. It's one thing that Canada's got going for it. There will be more lockdowns. I mean, climate change lockdowns. They use that rhetoric. I don't see that as being a primary vector to shutting things down because. But you're right, actually. You know, if they use enough HARP technology to create enough storms, it's certainly possible. Yeah, well, NYC is too much a hive mind right now. Does Melania Trump have more to do with the war than most would assume? I hear interesting things. Well, it certainly felt that way, but one of the things that Juan says is that she's used her dresses as semaphore. And if you guys don't know what semaphore is how they used to communicate on naval ships, right? So if you were trying to, this is like pre-radio and everything, if you were trying to communicate one ship to another, and actually they would even use it later on with radio if they were trying to send clandestine signals, they would change the flags on the ships. And so other ships would see a flag or a series of flags go up, and then that would indicate to them, okay, well, interesting, that means that other people who are watching wouldn't know what was going on. It would be communicated to the flagship. There's been some indications that Melania was using semaphore to communicate with other parties. So, for instance, with her Tiffany blue dress, when she and he gave that Tiffany box to Michelle Obama, that was all representative of, the JFKs, basically, because that was, I'm forgetting her name, actually, for whatever reason. Jackie Kennedy's. That was Jackie Kennedy's signature outfit. So, look, it's kind of like to say we haven't forgotten. So, yeah, she's definitely involved in the operation. It will be available to watch on Twitter. You're going to have to find it. And, Boris, I love you, Boris. Boris, I'm sorry I stole one of your hot women, but there's plenty of other ones in Poland. Don't be mad. Just find another one. It's all right. I know there's a lot of Anglos doing it, but, don't blame it on me, all right? Is it possible for them to release the bioweapon, the K variant? It's possible. I mean, I do think people are gonna die, but people are coming out with cures. There will be cures for this. I'm optimistic. Remember that everything, if something can be done, there is a solution for it. We may not know yet how to cure this, but I believe that we will find something that will cure it or at least mitigate it. So I'm optimistic that we'll be able to save a lot of people. And white pine needle tea to bring that full circle. Well, guys, I love you. Remember to continue to hold the light. Hold the light, stay positive. There is absolutely no reason for you to be afraid. Brace yourself. It's going to get tough. It's going to get tough. It's going to get scarier, but we got this. We got this. All right. I love you and see you.